The summer of 1939 lingered warm and uncertain over the fields near Krakow. Lieutenant Andrzej Kowalski watched the horizon, his uniform pressed, his heart restless. The Polish cavalry trained nearby, their lances glinting in the late sunlight. Radios spoke in hushed tones of German movements beyond the border. Villagers whispered of treaties and broken promises. Andrzej wrote in his notebook, "If war comes, we will stand firm. Poland will not kneel." Yet beneath his steady hand trembled fear, not for himself, but for his homeland. On August 31st, the still air seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, or was it artillery? The night before the world changed arrived not with fire, but with silence so sharp it cut through the soul. The lieutenant closed his eyes and prayed it was nothing, but deep inside he knew history was turning its page. At dawn on September 1st, 1939, the sky above Wieluń tore open with thunder not from heaven, but from German bombers. Andrzej's unit was woken by the distant growl of engines. Moments later, the horizon burned. He mounted his horse, shouting orders drowned by explosions. "To positions! Move!" Smoke rose like funeral banners over the town. Civilians fled along the roads, clutching children and icons. The lieutenant's comrades fought bravely, cartridges running dry, faces covered in dust. "This is it," murmured Corporal Zagota beside him. "The world has gone mad." The Luftwaffe hunted columns of refugees, and the Polish forces, though defiant, were outnumbered and outgunned. By evening, the sun disappeared behind a veil of thick, oily cloud. The war that Europe had feared for 2 decades had arrived, not with one battle, but with an apocalypse in motion. 2 days later, Andrzej's unit joined the Wileńska Cavalry Brigade near Mokra. Dawn mist curled through the trees as the men prepared defenses beside the railway embankment. "They'll come through here," said Major Smigley, his binoculars fixed on the distant forest. The first German tanks appeared soon after, steel beasts cutting through fog and dust. Polish artillery thundered, horses reared at the noise. Andrzej fired until the barrel burned his palms. Explosions rumbled across the fields like an unending storm. Hours passed in chaos, smoke, shouts, the clang of metal. By dusk, the brigade had halted the German advance. Amid the wrecked tanks, there were cheers and tears. "We stopped them, sir," whispered Zagota, blood on his sleeve. Andrzej nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. They had survived the day, a fleeting victory carved from courage and sacrifice. By mid-September, Andrzej's unit retreated toward Warsaw. The capital was under siege. He entered the city through streets reduced to rubble. The citizens carried buckets of water to douse fires as shells screamed overhead. General Valerian Chuma rallied both soldiers and civilians to defend every corner of their homeland's heart. Andrzej took post near the Saxon Garden, watching the skyline shatter piece by piece. A mother handed him a loaf of bread. "For the army," she said softly. There was no distinction between soldier and citizen now. All were defenders. The night sky burned red as Luftwaffe bombs fell again, the ground trembling with every blast. Yet songs rose from the shelters, defiant, sorrowful songs that carried through smoke. War had consumed the city, but not its soul. When the walls began to crumble, Andrzej received orders to break through toward the east. The night was cold, the Vistula River glimmering like liquid steel. "We move now," whispered Captain Rutkowski. Crossing under fire, soldiers waded through icy water, bullets rippling the surface. The air was thick with fear and determination. On the opposite bank, they formed a thin line of retreating souls, guided by the dim glow of distant fires. Behind them, Warsaw roared with explosions, as if the city itself refused to die quietly. Andrzej looked back once more at the burning skyline. "Farewell, my city," he murmured. Every man who crossed the river carried not only a rifle, but the memory of those still fighting in the ruins, proof that the spirit of Poland, though wounded, would not break.
On September 17th, the East that once seemed safe burned as well. The Soviet Union invaded from beyond the Bug River. Andrzej stood speechless as columns of red-starred tanks rolled through the mist. "Two enemies," Zegota muttered. "How can a country fight them both?" Villages that had welcomed retreating Polish forces now faced new flags and new fear. Andrzej watched as officers were arrested, maps torn from command posts. Despair hung in the air thicker than smoke. In one chilling moment, he realized their war had become a trap, surrounded, betrayed, silenced. Yet deep within him simmered a flicker of resolve. "If Poland must fall," he said quietly, "it will be only to rise again." Under gray skies, the remnants of the army melted into the forests, ghosts carrying a nation's sorrow.
Andrzej's unit was finally surrounded near Lwów. Ammunition gone, they laid down their arms under a sky streaked with ash. The German and Soviet lines met just beyond the fields, handshake of conquerors, sealing Poland's fate. The captured officers were herded together, cold, silent, eyes hollow with disbelief. Andrzej clenched his fists, feeling both rage and shame claw at him. A Soviet soldier offered him a cigarette. The lieutenant refused. For days they were marched eastward, passing through forests that blurred together under fatigue. In the darkness, whispers spread of camps and disappearances. No one spoke too loudly, for fear that truth itself had become a crime. It was not the chains that weighed most, but the silence of a world that watched and did nothing. Months passed before Andrzej escaped captivity. Disguised as a farmer, he vanished into the forests near Vilnius and made contact with the underground resistance forming under German and Soviet occupation. Hidden radios whispered of generals in exile and the birth of the Polish government in exile in London. In secret cellars, men and women of every class met by candlelight, swearing allegiance to a free Poland. Andrzej trained new recruits, his voice firm but eyes haunted. "We fight in the shadows now," he said. Outside, snow covered graves and ruins alike, softening the scars of invasion. But beneath that white silence, a heartbeat persisted, the pulse of resistance, unseen yet unbroken. In early 1940, Andrzej reached Hungary after a perilous journey through forests and mountain passes. From there, he joined the long trail of soldiers escaping to France to rebuild the Polish army. In the refugee camps, faces were gaunt, but eyes glimmered with determination. Letters arrived from home telling of further suffering, of occupiers' cruelty, of whispers that hope still lived. Andrzej vowed to fight again, not for glory, but so his countrymen's pain would have meaning. As he boarded a train toward France, he looked back at the Carpathian peaks fading in mist. The wind carried faint echoes of Warsaw, of Mokra, of those who had fallen. He whispered, "I will return," and the promise hardened into destiny. Years later, far from home, Andrzej fought again under foreign skies, in France, in Britain, and later at Monte Cassino. Yet, in quiet moments, his heart returned to 1939, the fields of Poland, the red glow above Warsaw, the comrades buried without graves. The Polish struggle of that year, though crushed, had ignited a spirit that never yielded. He kept a scrap of his old regimental flag folded inside his coat. On it he had written a single word: endure. When peace finally came in 1945, he stood beneath foreign stars, thinking of those who did not live to see it. The story of 1939 was not one of defeat, it was one of courage born in ruin, a testament that even in the darkest hours, the human will to stand free can outlast any empire.